Levelling up was a key message in the last election, which contributed both to the extent of the Conservative victory and the shock it delivered for Labour in their former heartlands in the north of England, the left-behind areas. Now, Will Tanner, a former number 10 advisor who was one of the first to identify the red wall seats, is severely critical of the government's subsequent top-down policies for levelling up, which he says are unlikely to work. He points to Labour's New Deal for Communities, one of the first policies of the Blair-Brown government, which gave communities the power to help themselves and did cut poverty. A report by Will Tanner's think tank Onward, published in the last few minutes, to which Newsnight was given early exclusive access, urges the government to abandon this top-down approach. Here's our political editor, Nick Watt.
The familiar rhythm of coastal life in the dying days of summer. Timeless habits in a place where time stood still after the collapse of heavy industry. Workington on the West Cumbrian coast, which has felt left behind. But this town found its voice at the last election when Workington Man symbolised Brexit-supporting Labour voters who switched to the Tories. As sceptics of globalisation, these voters expect help in reversing the decline of cherished local high streets.
With laser-like precision, Boris Johnson aimed his levelling up agenda, the idea of directing resources at remote areas, at places just like this. But now, a Tory-leaning think tank that first identified Workington Man is warning that his plans are in danger of going awry.
It warns of too much control by central government, and it calls for a far greater say for local communities. And there should also be a focus on regenerating local neighbourhoods, not just big infrastructure projects.
We came up with the Workington Man concept at the last election. We identified that as the archetypal voter that swung towards the Conservative Party and delivered all those seats in the north of England, like Workington, like Walsall, like Warrington, those seats that the Conservative Party had often never held before. And it's precisely those seats that would benefit from a more localised approach, a bottom-up approach where communities taking control of local assets like libraries and sports clubs and community hubs, using them as the linchpin for regeneration is likely to be successful in regenerating those local areas.
That message is resonating in Workington, where there's a feeling that London, and indeed Manchester, don't always know best.
I don't think they've got their finger on the pulse of what's actually happening up in the northwest. And people talk about the north of England, they usually mean Manchester. They forget there's another 150 miles north of Manchester that still need levelling up if that's what they want.
It's all very well saying support with sort of schemes for the young people, but look around you. We're a rural area. We don't have lots of public transport. It's all very well putting apprentice schemes in place, but how are those young people going to get to physically, how are they going to actually get to their job?
They do need to come further north to see what it's really like. It's jobs we need, definitely, with the shops closing and different things like that. And if he did what he really said he would do, was try and equal things a little bit, it's not come to fruition yet, but I'm hoping it will.
It went Conservative.
But the Tory leader of the local council doesn't recognise the criticism in the report.
We've certainly not encountered that, because a lot of the schemes that we've put forward that have been successful bids have been community driven. For example, we're looking at developing a sports village just beside us here, and that will involve a stadium for the local rugby team and the football team. And that is driven by those two clubs. So it's sort of from grassroots up as opposed to it being imposed on them.
A debate in Workington about the help from this government, but little debate about an earlier government.
And there's a sting in the tail for Boris Johnson, who regards himself as the father of levelling up. This report advises him to follow in the steps of New Labour, which did have some successful programmes to revive communities like this.
They understood Labour's programme better.
And an iconic figure from those years welcomes the news that Labour's New Deal for Communities should serve as a template for Boris Johnson.
Somehow that this government thinks it invented a concern for an investment in communities that have gone through difficult times and may have high levels of deprivation. There have been policies to tackle this since I've been in politics. I remember Harold Wilson building the bridge over the Humber. But the New Deal in the communities was a really successful programme, and what was interesting about it is that the Labour government was rigorous. We did ensure that we properly evaluated investment in new programmes, and the data demonstrates it's worked.
Remote, coastal and far from Britain's economic powerhouses. A community in need of support, but a community at the centre of politics today as the government grapples with an old theme for a new era.
Nick Watt. David Morris, Conservative MP for Morecambe and Lunsdale and Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Lancashire, joins us. Good evening to you. Do you see top-down as what's happening in Lancashire?
No, because if you actually look into the perspectives of the Levelling Up agenda, it actually says categorically you've got to go through a local district council. The money goes through a local district council, and then you have to apply. Anyone can apply for whatever scheme they want. In my area, what I've always said is that I would back the Eden project. The Eden project is our flagship Levelling Up project in the north of England. And we've been talking about this now for 4 years, and we've got to a stage now where the planning has just gone in this week. So we are going to be lobbying government, and this week it was confirmed by the Chancellor he's going to have a high-level meeting with me about finding how we can actually deliver the Eden project in the centre of Morecambe.
So in big urban areas, what seemed to be suggested by people there was that too much of the money is focused on big urban areas, and local people at a small community level feel that they don't want to be left out of this. And do you feel they are being left out at all? You talk about your own area, but when you look around you, do you think there's a danger of that?
I've looked at the report. I just got sight of it by Onward, and the 39 areas referred to that the New Deal for Communities from the Blair-Brown era, the report says that it's broadly been the same. It has slowed down, but bear in mind when that deal actually stopped was in 2011. We've had austerity, we've had all kinds of economic problems and boosts as well at the same time. But we are in a position now where we're looking at levelling up mainly on infrastructure projects to get people moving around the country, to actually promote business in certain areas. I mean, I can point to a bypass. When I was first elected, I secured 125 million to get a bypass coming into Morecambe. That's the sole reason why Eden Project North want to come here, purely and simply because we're the quickest route to the seaside anywhere from the M6 in the whole country. So it shows that if you can get the large things right, the smaller things will follow.
And what would your advice be to the government on how to improve the levelling up approach?
Well, in all honesty, when the Levelling Up programme was actually put before the House, we had the COVID issue already there. So it's going to take a bit of time for, shall we say, the money to come through. But the ethos of what it's there to do, I think, is the right thing. It is all about trying to get money into certain pockets and certain areas of the United Kingdom to ensure that prosperity starts to occur. We've done that here in Morecambe. We proved that with the Link Road. And, I'm absolutely certain we're going to be getting Eden shortly, which will give us lots of future employment for youngsters here. We've already signed a deal, this is Morecambe College, with Eden to train up the youngsters for Eden International, because the prestigious Eden brand is not just in Cornwall, it's all around the world. So we are starting to see the fruition of investment in areas. We may be 5-6 years ahead of the curve of what's actually being proposed at this moment in time. But it does show that if you invest in areas, if you invest in a solution and not throw money to problem, good things start to happen.
Thanks very much indeed, David Morris.